Welcome to the 4Cs podcast for SAP Business One, brought to you by Third Wave Business Systems. I'm Mike Ham, and my colleague Tyson McMurrin, bringing you a podcast that takes a deeper dive into the ERP system that is SAP Business One. We'll be hosting product experts and members of the Business One community, helping you, a Business One user, get the most out of SAP Business One. Hello and welcome back to the 4Cs for SAP Business One. I want to welcome you all to episode 11. We'll be talking about connect and communicate. I'm going to be diving into a history of barcodes and their impact in SAP. With me as always, my colleague Tyson McMurrin. And let's jump right into it. Talk about barcodes and a brief history. Initially, these barcodes were invented by Norman Joseph Woodland and Bernard Silver. US had them patented in '51, and these barcodes were based actually on the Morse code. And one of the early adopters of the barcode system was actually in railcar identification. Proved to be more successful, however, with the first scanning of the now ubiquitous UPC barcode. It was actually on a pack of Wrigley chewing gum and a grocery store. And today, as I'm sure all of you have seen, barcodes are used in just about everything, particularly in healthcare for patient identification and across nearly all consumer goods. Anything you pick up seems to have one of those little barcode stickers on it. And Tyson, talk a little bit more about why this topic intrigues us.
Well, Mike, I kind of picked the history of barcodes just because I know that you're a history major from your university days. So, I thought we'd kind of just start at a high level in regards to, barcodes have been around for a long time and they haven't been replaced. Although there's been some, challengers out there in regards to things, and we can talk a little bit more about that a little bit later in the podcast. But the history of it is just to really kind of give us some insight into, a pack of juicy fruit back in 1974 was the first item ever scanned in a grocery store, and that was the NRC technology group that had that technology built out, and surprisingly, the parent company of NRC at that time was Hobart, which is a big company that manufactures scales. So they saw the need for grocery stores to streamline their processes in order to get people through checkouts faster, and to also help with the ability to identify what's selling and what's not selling, make inventory management a lot easier at the retail level. So, the barcode's been around for a long time, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. And again, we can talk a little bit more about that later, but I just thought a little history lesson here would just kind of help us frame, why barcodes are so important, especially for anybody that's in the consumer goods space or food distribution, pharmaceutical companies, implant companies, anybody that has any kind of requirement, industry requirement, barcodes are certainly at the forefront of helping you with accuracy of information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's touch upon some of the different types. As you mentioned, they haven't changed and really gone anywhere, but there's a number of different types out there in determining, what kind and how much data that they're going to give you.
Yeah. So Mike, the types of barcodes is kind of really important because typically, we at Third Wave, we'll get a call from a customer or from a prospect, and they'll say, I want to do barcoding. And a lot of times what they mean is that they want to be able to scan barcodes.
Yeah.
But what these barcodes are essentially different industry groups went out and set standards around what the numerical representation of that barcode means. And the reason that this is important, and the reason that you see all these different variations, is that we never want the same item to be scanned and have another item come up because of having duplicates in your systems. So a lot of these barcodes came from industry organizations that said, here's the Uniform Product Classification Code, a UPC code, right? And these 14 digits mean things. And then Europe kind of did the same thing, where they have an EAN number, which essentially is the same thing, where it's like, this is the number. But what's interesting about all these different barcodes that we're seeing, Mike, is that none of them are exactly the same. And the reason is that everybody's kind of respected everybody else's standards.
Yep.
So it's important to note that when you look at a package, a lot of times here in the US, you are going to see maybe 1 or 2 barcodes on a product. Generally, you're going to see a UPC or an EAN label that identifies, that this is the product. And then the other barcode that you'll see a lot of times is either going to be a 2-dimensional barcode where there's additional information behind it. So for example, a serial number, or it can take you out to like a website to validate. So we see a lot of this in counterfeit products, where manufacturers are putting a 2D barcode that holds the unique information around that particular item, and then it also, that QR code, that when you scan it, it takes you out to a website and tells you exactly what makes up that bag, and where it was manufactured, who it was sold to, so that if you bought it from a different store than the one that it says that it was sold to, maybe they've duplicated out that barcode. So a lot of times this 2-dimensional barcode is allowing for information such as where this was manufactured. In the pharmaceutical and food industry, 2-dimensional barcodes will hold additional information. For example, date of manufacture, the total number of pounds, maybe the vendor that it was bought from. So just holding additional information within that barcode. GS1 and barcodes.com are a good place to go out and research the types of barcodes that are out there. If you're a reseller, the types of barcodes don't necessarily really matter, but it is important for you to understand what a UPC is or what an EAN is, because if you are working with your customers and you're telling them that this is the UPC and it's not a 14-digit number, they're going to reject it.
Absolutely, and that's a good part to transition into what barcodes can do for your business as far as compliance and accuracy are concerned. You just touched upon one of those now. Talk more about that. We talked about the different types of barcodes and how each type has a different type of regulatory compliance that you got to fall within, and that's all dictated, based on what type of barcode you're using and what type of industry you're in. Tell us more about that and things to be cognizant of.
Yeah, if you think about where the barcode started from, from that retail use case, it was all about, increasing efficiency and accuracy of information within the retail grocery store. So if you're a manufacturer or a distributor of goods, why not use this information that's on your items already to streamline your operations, and a lot of that's being forced upon us, especially in regulatory industries. You have 4 hours to be able to do a mock recall and call out exactly all of the ingredients that have been put into a product, or where you sold that product to. So if they say this lot number has an issue and you do a mock recall, you have to be able to call that information very quickly. So if you're keying batch numbers into your shipments to your customers, there's a couple things that you kind of lose. One is that efficiency that I talked about, first and foremost, because now you're keying information after the fact. And the second is the accuracy of that information. So, these barcodes, the technology around, the readers and the barcode labels themselves, they're very easy to scan and they're very, very accurate now. And the other side of it is if you understand, the types of barcodes, and if you define your barcodes in your SAP Business One environment correctly, the accuracy of the item that you're scanning is ultimately going to be there, and same with the batch number behind it. So, compliance is one of the big areas that we see a lot of our customers calling and asking for barcoding, because they need that accuracy, or they need to be compliant within their industry requirements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And now, if we're getting into larger, big box stores and goods are, you have a partnership with, say, an Amazon, for example, what role do barcodes play in that relationship? How does that cross over with compliance?
Yeah, this is an important fact. So if you're selling with Amazon, they're gonna request a unique product barcode. So if you're selling something that you're manufacturing and you've never had barcoding on it, for example, let's say you make lip gloss or something like that, and you've never had a barcode on it, and now you're selling it on Amazon and you're doing fulfill by Amazon, or just selling on Amazon, Amazon's going to require you to have a barcode. So if it's a product, like I said, like the chapstick, you're going to have to go out and get a barcode. So you have to get onto one of these registries in order to, say that this chapstick is this UPC number. So there's a couple ways that you can do that. You can buy a barcode, or you can rent a barcode, and there's services out there. If you Google search, renting a barcode, I'm sure if you go out to the Amazon environments, they're going to tell you. The types of barcodes that they support. But if you get into selling to Walmart, for example, Walmart's gotten a little bit more specific in the type of barcode that they want on the retail products. And what they want is what's called a GTIN, which is a Global Trading Identification Number. So they want a GTIN number. They don't want any other, combination of those. So they want to be sure that, the item is identified and that they don't have any duplicate scans of that item, because they're using that specific standard. So this is where compliance becomes important, because if you're selling to any of the majors, they might come back and start assessing you with chargebacks because you don't have the right type of barcode on the item. The other thing that happens when you're selling to the majors is they will also have requirements around packaging. And so, how many of the chapsticks do you put into a box? And then labeling that box with a barcode. And then if you palletize the boxes, where they want that barcode on the box and how they want them represented and stacked on a pallet. So compliance becomes a really important thing. And if you're not compliant, you're going to end up getting chargebacks. And Mike, I think chargebacks is probably something that we should have another podcast topic on, because it's something that if you're selling out to the majors that you deal with all the time, is investigating and reconciling chargebacks. So it's important to know that there are tools out there for you to be able to get a barcode on an item. It's also important that if you're purchasing these items and you're setting up to sell with certain industries, to really kind of understand, what kind of barcode is it that's on that product. There's some really good apps that are out there that you can get on your phone. that identify the type of barcode it is. So if you just search barcode identifiers, you can take your phone and you can actually just hover it over top of the UPC, and it'll tell you the type of barcode that it is. So it'll tell you if it's an EAN or a UPC or whatever the type of barcode it is, a GS1 128. It'll be able to decipher that and tell you the type of barcode you have that you're dealing with. So as you grow and you start selling into these retailers, or doing fulfill by Amazon, or any kind of like 3PL packaging or anything like that, it's important to really kind of spend some time and think about barcodes, and spend some time really making sure that you have a handle on what's going on there, and we're always available if you have any questions and need additional support around barcodes.
Well, I'm glad you touched upon something that I'm happy you mentioned, talking about a barcode scanner app on your phone, right? So when you talk about phones and tablets, where we've seen an explosion in the mobile needs of companies, has really come in the warehouse, particularly in production, manufacturing, shop floor. We've seen a lot of mobile explosion in these areas because it's easier, right? So with the scanning technology that's out there, there's not only can you use your phone or tablet and the camera to capture those barcodes in those environments, but also there's barcode scanners. So I guess 3 and 4 we can really talk about in one. Tell us more about things to be cognizant of about barcodes in your WMS solution. Right? I guess we'll start there, and we can migrate into what barcode scanners can do for you as well in that arena.
Yeah, so one of the main areas where you want to streamline operations is going to be around your warehouse operations, and the first natural thing to do is to really kind of start saving footsteps and streamlining your warehouse operations, and that starts with receiving goods, putting them away, picking those goods, packing them, shipping them. If you can implement barcode scanning throughout those processes, whether you're on a mobile device for some of that, or at a pack station with a Bluetooth barcode scanner against a PC, it's important to note that streamlining with a WMS solution is probably one of the first areas that you're going to get a good return on investment, because you're going to save steps. You're going to really kind of align yourself with that compliance side of things as well. So for example, if you're fulfilling with Wayfair or Amazon, they're going to have certain fulfillment rules. If you're selling to the big box retailers, they're going to have delivery windows where you have to have the goods on their trucks within a certain period of time. Otherwise, you're faced with a chargeback. So really streamlining your operations so that you can find goods, pick goods, ship goods quickly, accurately, and efficiently, especially if you're in a regulatory environment where you have to capture, serial numbers or batch numbers along with that. It's really important to have all that information tied together in a WMS solution. So we have a lot of experience around warehouse optimization and implementing best practices around streamlining all of those types of initiatives. But the other side of it is the EDI transaction afterwards as well, of getting that out to your trading partner in a timely fashion, and that really kind of gets into making sure that the data flows, right? And we talk about this pretty much in all of our podcasts, right? Which is the whole workflow of making sure that all the information's flowing, and this becomes important with especially the big box retailers, because around that compliance side of things, you have a certain window of time to send an advanced shipment notice to them. Otherwise, they won't accept it. because they have certain windows when they're expecting it to come in, and if it doesn't come in within that window, they'll send you a chargeback, or they'll refuse all the goods when they start receiving it. So, streamlining your warehouse operations with barcode scanning makes a lot of sense from operational efficiency, but it also really helps, especially if you're in regulatory environments where compliance of, food or drug traceability, those types of things is important, but also around the compliance of making sure that you're following the rules that your customers laid out for you so that you're not getting dinged with chargebacks becomes really important. But barcodes can also be used in your operations just for things like work orders. So if I have a work order, instead of me keying in that work order number, I can scan it. I can capture the time that I scanned that at, and then I can capture the time of when I finish it. And now, instead of me having to, track my time, I can have the system track my time because I'm just scanning, barcodes.
To your point there, I remember one of my first jobs out of college. I initially started in a warehouse, and we were putting together voice over IP phones, and we were changing out parts on them, whether it was a board, an LCD screen, indicator lights, things like that. But what we would do is we would scan the phone, scan the parts box whatever part, and then that would bring up that particular phone, and then that would determine how much that phone then cost, resale value, depending upon what parts. And I'll tell you, if we didn't have the scanners, we would have been there all day, manually keying in information as far as putting, every piece that we added to that particular VoIP phone. So in my personal experience,
or you'd be writing it down on paper and turning it into the office.
Exactly.
And transposition and timing of that information becomes a big problem as well.
Exactly, but that allowed us to track trends, and we were able to identify, all right, certain models of phones, here the boards would go, or the LCDs tend to go on these, or this batch of phones that we purchased, from this decommissioned company, this wasn't a good bet. It cost us more to put the parts on the phones. Okay, that in turn tells you, what your overhead's going to be when you're bringing in product in an environment like technology refurbishment and IT lifecycle management. Tyson, I think you've done a great job driving home, what to be cognizant of if you're already using barcodes, looking to implement barcodes on your products, looking to expand into different areas, work with different retailers, bring barcodes into your warehouse, and things to keep an eye out for. And also, ultimately, what we talk about here on the podcast is driving efficiencies and finding areas in your business where you can stop rekeying information, and barcodes definitely help you do that. And with that, we'll close out episode 11 of the 4Cs podcast. Thank you as always, Tyson. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Take care and stay connected, everyone.